Captain Ryland stood on the shining floor of the Accord Hall with his hands folded behind his back. Around him rose the tall columns of silver and crystal that held the roof of the great chamber. Banners of 100 different worlds hung from the walls. Beings from dozens of species filled the benches above. The Accord was not just a council, but a theater of pride and power. Every word spoken here could shape the fate of star systems. Humans had joined the Stellar Accord only 20 years ago. They were new and untested. The older races considered them strange. Too small, too fragile, too loud, too stubborn. Even so, humanity had earned a seat after proving its loyalty in border wars. Still, many doubted them. Today was Ryland's chance to prove that humans deserved more than a token place in the galaxy. The ceremony was for pairing envoys of different races into joint missions. Each envoy would represent the balance of the Accord and show unity between worlds. When Ryland's name was called, he walked forward with steady steps. He did not bow, he did not tremble. His dark eyes were fixed on the great platform ahead where his new partner waited. Lady Siraxa of the Carvos was a living mountain. She stood over twice the height of Ryland and wore armor made of plates that shimmered like obsidian. Her skin was pale silver with faint blue lines glowing across it. Her hair fell in long braids heavy with metal rings. The Carvos were famous across the stars as warriors. They were known for their size, their unmatched strength, and their fierce pride. When Ryland approached her, Siraxa tilted her head. Her golden eyes studied him with a mix of curiosity and disdain. Then she laughed. The sound was like thunder rolling through the chamber. Her voice was deep and carried across the hall. "This is my partner," she said. "This small man from the new world of Earth, this little creature who can be crushed by a single hand." Laughter rose from some of the benches. Other envoys smiled or whispered. Ryland stood calm, though he felt heat in his chest. Siraxa took one long step forward and lowered her face toward him. Her eyes burned with amusement. "Do the humans think they can stand beside the Carvos? Do they dream of mixing with us? Do they imagine our blood could ever flow together?" The words stung, but Ryland did not move. He knew that every envoy watched. He knew that one wrong reaction would shame not only him but all of Earth. He lifted his chin and met her gaze. "Lady Siraxa," he said in a firm voice, "strength is not only in size. Pride is not only in muscle. We are here to serve the Accord together. If you laugh at me, then laugh, but when the mission comes, you will see why I was chosen." Some of the benches grew quiet. His voice carried confidence, not anger. Siraxa's lips curled into a smile, but her laughter returned louder than before. "Bold words from a small mouth," she said. "I will enjoy watching you try." The Accord Master announced the pairing as official. The humans and Carvos would serve together on a mission to the ruined world of Venar, a planet lost to machines during the old wars. The goal was to survey the ruins and prepare them for resettlement. For the Accord, it was a routine mission. For humanity, it was a chance to show worth. As the ceremony ended, Ryland walked beside Siraxa toward the docks. Her steps shook the floor with each movement. She carried a blade on her back taller than Ryland himself. She glanced at him and smirked. "You walk with courage for someone so small," she said. "But courage does not build walls against plasma fire. Courage does not stop a falling stone," Ryland answered simply. "Maybe not. But courage keeps us moving when the wall falls and when the stone has already struck." Siraxa raised a brow at that, but said nothing more. They boarded the Accord ship Valor's Reach. The vessel shone with sleek lines of silver and blue light. The crew was mixed from many races, each wearing the insignia of the Accord. The captain saluted Siraxa with respect, then looked at Ryland with mild curiosity. The humans still carried the weight of doubt. In the days that followed, Ryland studied maps of Venar. He read the history of the machine war that had burned the planet. He memorized the terrain, the ruins, the energy storms. At the same time, he trained with the crew. He sparred with soldiers taller and stronger than him. He lost often, but he learned quickly. He grew faster, sharper, more focused. Siraxa watched from a distance. She never trained with him. To her, it was a waste of time. She spent her hours lifting weights that bent the training floor, strengthening her massive frame. She drilled with her great blade until sparks flew from the walls. When crew members asked about Ryland, she laughed again. "He is small, he is fragile, he is human. I could break him with a finger. The Accord has made a joke of pairing us." But one evening, Ryland walked past her after finishing a spar. His face was marked with sweat and his arm with bruises, but his eyes were steady. He carried no bitterness, only focus. Siraxa narrowed her eyes. There was no shame in his look. No fear either. The Valor's reach soon reached orbit above Vanar. From space, the planet looked like a cracked gem. Scars of war cut across its surface. Blackened cities lay buried under dust. Clouds of ash drifted in the thin atmosphere. Energy storms flashed in violet arcs over mountains. The crew prepared to land. Rylan checked his gear carefully. He adjusted the seal on his helmet and the charge on his rifle. Syraxa stood beside him, her armor gleaming her blade across her back. She looked down at him and smirked. "Stay behind me, human. If the machines still crawl in these ruins, they will crush you first." Rylan replied calmly. "I will walk where I must. If danger comes, you will see what a human can do." The landing craft descended through the storms. The sky glowed with strange light. Ruins stretched across the ground, broken towers leaning like teeth. The land was silent yet heavy, as if waiting. When they touched down, Syraxa stepped out first, her massive form casting a long shadow. Rylan followed his boots, pressing into the ash. His heart beat faster, but his steps were steady. The mission had begun. And though Syraxa laughed at him, though the galaxy doubted him, Rylan knew this truth deep inside. Humanity was more than size, more than muscle, more than pride. Humanity carried something the galaxy had yet to understand. The landing craft rested on the ruined soil of Vanar. Dust swirled around its legs as the engines cooled. The crew stepped out one by one, scanning the lifeless horizon. The planet had once been full of green valleys and oceans, but now only cracked stone and burned towers remained. Lightning arced across the distant sky in purple streaks, and the air tasted of iron and ash. Captain Rylan tightened the strap on his helmet and checked his rifle once more. He was not afraid of the silence. He had trained himself to hear more than sound. The silence of Vanar was not peace, but the silence of a predator waiting to move. Lady Syraxa walked beside him, her massive blade gleaming across her back. Every step she took left a deep mark in the soil. Her eyes swept across the ruins as if daring danger to rise. The mission was simple on paper. Survey the ruins, check for any surviving machines, and mark the area for future resettlement. Yet nothing about Vanar felt simple. The machines that had destroyed this world were old enemies. They had been built long ago by an unknown race and had turned on their masters. They had wiped out whole systems before the Accord finally drove them back. Many believed the machines were gone, but whispers said some still hid in the shadows of ruined worlds. The crew split into two teams. Rylan and Syraxa led the first team toward the ruins of a city. The other team moved toward the mountains. Communication links were set and the mission began. As they walked through the broken streets, Rylan studied the structures. Towers of black glass rose half-shattered. Bridges hung broken across the air. Strange marks lined the walls like scars burned into stone. Syraxa walked ahead with long strides. She seemed restless, as if waiting for something to prove her strength. "You study too much," she said in her deep voice. "These ruins are dead. No knowledge hides here, only dust." Rylan kept his eyes on the walls. "Knowledge hides in dust. Every mark tells a story. The more we understand, the better we survive." Syraxa laughed at that. "Stories do not stop blades. When the enemy comes, you will hide behind me and your stories will be forgotten." Rylan gave no reply. He had learned that words alone could not change the mind of a warrior like Syraxa. She would only see truth in action. Hours passed as they moved deeper into the ruins. The team scanned for energy signals, but the readings stayed low. The silence pressed harder, and even the wind seemed to avoid the broken city. Rylan's instincts sharpened. He had learned to trust them. Humans often survived not by strength, but by sensing danger before it struck. When the attack came, it came without warning. A beam of red light cut across the street and struck the ground near Syraxa. The soil exploded, throwing dust into the air. From the shadows of the towers, shapes began to move. Metallic figures with sharp limbs and glowing eyes stepped into view. Their bodies were built of black plates, each limb edged with blades. They moved without sound, their steps like the cut of knives. The machines had not died. They had been waiting. "Battle," Syraxa roared. She drew her blade in one swift motion. The weapon was taller than Rylan and heavier than stone, yet in her hands it moved like a branch of wood. She swung it once and 3 machines fell in pieces. Sparks lit the air. The crew fired their rifles. Beams of light struck the machines, cutting holes in their armor. But more came. The ruins seemed alive with metal as dozens poured from hidden chambers. The air filled with fire and sparks. Rylan fired his rifle with careful aim. Each shot struck joints and weak points. He did not waste energy. He moved from cover to cover, his eyes searching not only for enemies but for the source of the attack. Machines did not move without command. Somewhere nearby, a control node was guiding them. Siraxa fought like a storm. Her blade flashed, cutting down waves of enemies. Yet even she could not stand against the endless tide. Chains of glowing nanite wires shot from the machines and wrapped around her limbs. They tightened, pulling her down. She roared and pulled back with her strength, but the chains drank her energy. Each moment they glowed brighter, draining her body. The crew tried to cut the chains with fire, but their rifles only sparked against the wires. Siraxa sank to one knee, her blade trembling in her grip. For the first time her eyes widened with something close to fear. "Human," she shouted to Rylan. "Cut me free. They will drain me." Rylan dashed forward, but he did not shoot at the chains. Instead, he dropped to the ground and pressed his hand to the soil. He searched for the signal. His helmet scanner flickered. Faint pulses ran through the ash beneath them. The machines were drawing power from a core buried under the street. That was why the chains could not be broken by fire. "Hold them back," Rylan called to the crew. He slung his rifle and pulled a small toolkit from his pack. While others saw only ruins, Rylan had studied the old war records. He had seen the design of these machines. Their power always flowed through hidden cores. He used the cutter from his kit and opened the ground where the signal was strongest. Sparks burst as he sliced into a panel. Beneath the soil, he found a black cube humming with energy. Strange symbols glowed across its surface. Rylan's hands moved quick and sure. He twisted wires, cut lines, and forced open circuits. The cube pulsed brighter as if fighting back. Siraxa's strength waned. The chains glowed brighter around her arms and legs. She bared her teeth and pulled with all her might. But even her power failed. She looked toward Rylan and saw him kneeling over the soil, working with tiny tools instead of swinging a blade. For a moment she thought it was madness. Then she saw the machines falter. Their steps slowed, their eyes flickered. With a final strike of his cutter, Rylan pierced the core. It cracked open with a burst of light and smoke. The pulse stopped. At once the chains around Siraxa broke and fell into ash. The machines froze mid-step, then collapsed like empty shells. The ruins fell silent again. The crew stared at Rylan in shock. Siraxa rose to her full height. Her body shook from the drain, but her eyes burned with new fire. She stepped toward Rylan and looked down at him. "You did this," she said. Rylan stood and wiped dust from his hands. "I only followed the signal." The machines were never endless. They only looked endless. Break the heart and the body falls. For the first time, Siraxa did not laugh. She studied him in silence. Then she gave a single nod. "You are small," she said, "but today your mind cut deeper than my blade." The crew cheered and began to gather the wreckage. Reports were sent back to the ship. The mission had nearly failed, yet it had revealed the truth. The machines were not gone. They still hid in the ruins, waiting for the day to rise again. But they had also shown something else. Humanity, though small, carried skills that no other race could match. As they returned to the landing craft, the sun of Venar sank behind the broken towers. Shadows stretched long across the ground. Siraxa walked beside Rylan, silent now. She no longer looked at him as a joke. She looked at him as something she did not yet understand, and Rylan, though tired, walked with quiet strength. He knew this was only the beginning. The machines were stirring. The galaxy still doubted humanity. But on this ruined world, a seed had been planted. One day the galaxy would see that size and power were not the only measure of worth. The Valor's Reach left the broken world of Venar behind, carrying wreckage samples and heavy silence. The crew walked through the ship's halls with respect for Captain Rylan. They had seen him disarm the core when even the strongest warrior could not. Stories spread fast on a vessel. Some said he was lucky. Others said humans were more dangerous than they looked. Lady Siraxa kept her silence during the first days after the battle. She spent her hours in the training hall, striking the steel dummies until their frames broke apart. The memory of the nanite chains still lingered in her mind. She had felt powerless. She had felt drained. That feeling was one she had never known before. When she closed her eyes, she saw Rylan kneeling in the ash, working with tools smaller than her fingers, pulling victory out of defeat. The image would not leave her. She had laughed at him many times, yet now she carried no laughter when she thought of him. Instead, she carried questions she could not answer. One evening, the ship's medic called for both envoys. Strange readings had appeared in the post-mission scans. Accord rules demanded that all envoys undergo health checks after direct combat. Saraxa entered the chamber first, her armor clattering as she moved. Rylan followed with a steady pace. The medic was a thin being from the Zarin species with long arms and silver eyes. It studied the results on its glowing panel. Its face shifted in surprise. "This is unusual," it said. Saraxa folded her arms. "What is unusual? Speak clearly." The medic turned the panel toward them. "During the battle on Vaynar, your life signals overlapped. The nanite chains drained you, Lady Saraxa, but the human's presence disrupted their link. It is as if your bodies responded together. I have never seen a human and Carvo share such resonance." Rylan raised a brow. "Resonance, you mean our signals matched?" The medic nodded. "Yes, more than matched. They combined for a short time. Your body," Lady Saraxa reacted as if it recognized him not as foreign, but as compatible. The chamber fell silent. Saraxa blinked, then threw back her head and laughed. Her voice shook the walls. "Compatible with this small creature, this human. The idea is absurd." But the medic did not laugh. Its eyes glowed brighter. "Absurd or not, the data is true. The Carvos have struggled for centuries. Your people grow fewer each generation. Our records show your bodies reject the blood of other races. Yet here, in this human, there is a pattern your body did not reject." Saraxa's laughter faded. She looked at Rylan. For a moment her face was unreadable. Then she turned away. "Your machines make mistakes. I trust only steel, not numbers." The medic lowered its voice. "Steel cannot heal what time has broken. If the Accord learns of this, it may see humans in a new light. I suggest caution." Rylan felt the weight of the words. He had come to prove humans were strong enough to stand in the Accord. Now the galaxy might see them as something more, yet he knew what such news could cause. Fear, anger, hope. The balance of the Accord was fragile. Later, in the quiet of the observation deck, Rylan stood alone looking out at the stars. The great belt of the galaxy stretched before him, rivers of light across endless dark. He thought of Earth, small and often forgotten, and of Saraxa, tall and proud. They could not have been more different. Yet the medic's words echoed in his mind. Compatible, resonance, impossible union. He heard heavy steps behind him. Saraxa entered, her armor glinting under the starlight. She stood beside him without speaking for a long time. Then she said, "Do you believe the medic?" Rylan kept his eyes on the stars. "I believe what I saw. You were bound and drained. I acted and the chains broke. I do not know if that is resonance. I only know we survived because we stood together." Saraxa's voice was low. "The Carvos do not stand with others. We fight alone. We win alone. That is our pride. But when those chains held me, my pride was ash. Your hands gave me back my strength. That is truth, and I cannot laugh at it." Rylan turned to her. "Then maybe the Accord paired us for a reason. Not as a joke. Not as insult. Maybe they saw something we did not." Her golden eyes locked on his. For a moment the warrior and the envoy simply stood in silence, bound not by chains but by the memory of what they had faced. Then Saraxa looked away. "The Accord will not like this," she said. "If our blood is truly compatible, some will fear. Others will want to use it. War has started for less." The next day the rumor spread. The medic had not kept the secret. By the time the Valors reached docked at the Accord station, whispers filled the halls. Envoys of other races watched the humans with new eyes. Some stared in awe, others in distrust. During the council session, the matter was raised. A tall envoy of the Vorn species declared, "If the Carvos and humans can share blood, then the balance of our union is shaken. What does this mean for the Accord? If new unions rise, will the old powers fall?" A voice from the Torelli side hissed, "The humans are too young to hold such power. This must be controlled before it spreads." Others shouted back, arguing that this was a gift, a sign of survival for the Carvos, who had long feared their decline. Hope mixed with fear. The chamber became a storm of voices. Rylan sat in silence, his hands clenched. He had wanted respect for his people, but not like this. Not as a fire that could burn the Accord apart. Saraxa rose to speak. Her voice silenced the chamber. "You fear the shadow of a child not yet born," she said. "You fear what may be instead of facing what is. The truth is simple. On Vaynar, a human saved me when strength alone failed. His blood did not weaken me. His presence did not break me. It gave me life. Laugh if you wish. Fear if you must. But you cannot deny what happened." Her words carried the weight of a warrior who had faced death. Many envoys fell quiet. Some still glared, but others lowered their heads in thought. After the session, Rylan found Saraxa waiting by the docks. She looked at him with a strange expression. Not pride, not scorn, something else. You changed how they see you, she said. But the storm has only begun. The Accord will not forget this. Neither will I. Rylan met her gaze. Then we will face the storm together. That is what envoys are meant to do. For the first time since they met, Syraxa did not laugh at him. She gave a slow nod. In her eyes burned not amusement but respect. As the Valor's Reach prepared for its next mission, the weight of the impossible union hung over them. The galaxy had seen a glimpse of something new. What began as a laugh in the Accord Hall was now a seed that could grow into change for every world. And deep inside Syraxa's heart, though she did not admit it even to herself, she felt a shift. The thought of impossibility no longer brought only laughter. It brought a quiet fear and a strange hope. The Accord station hung in space like a crown of silver. Dozens of ships came and went each day. Halls of polished stone and glowing glass stretched for miles. It was here that the Council of Races met, and it was here that the storm now gathered. The news of resonance between human and Carvos blood had spread across the stars. It could not be hidden. It was on every channel, whispered in every corridor, and argued in every chamber. To some it was a miracle. To others it was a danger that could break the fragile balance of the Accord. Captain Rylan walked through the station with calm steps, though he felt the eyes on him. Some envoys nodded with respect. Others turned their faces away. A few spat words under their breath about humans climbing too high too fast. He had expected doubt, but the weight of so many voices pressed on him like stone. Lady Syraxa moved beside him. Her steps were heavy, her armor clinking with each motion. She saw the stares and heard the whispers, but her face showed no weakness. If anyone dared to speak against her directly, her golden eyes silenced them. Yet inside she carried unease. The Carvos were proud, and pride could turn to anger when their traditions were threatened. The council chamber was filled when they entered. Banners of every race lined the walls. The great seats rose in a circle around the center floor. The Accord Master, a tall being of light and shadow, called the session to order. At once the voices began. The humans are too new, shouted a Tyrelli envoy. They cannot be allowed to reshape the order of the Accord. The Carvos have fought alone for centuries, said a Voran elder. If they mix their blood with humans, what becomes of the old alliances, what becomes of the balance? A voice from the Zarin side answered, calm but firm. What if this is not a threat but a gift? The Carvos are fading. Their numbers shrink each year. If the human spark can keep them alive, should we not welcome it? The chamber erupted in argument. Some envoys shouted of danger, others of hope. The walls echoed with their cries. Rylan stood in the center with Syraxa. He kept his face steady, but his chest tightened. He had wanted to prove humanity's worth through courage and skill, not through rumors of bloodlines. He looked up at the endless rows of envoys and saw fear in their eyes. Fear could break a council faster than any blade. The Accord Master raised its hand. Light filled the chamber and the voices fell silent. We have heard the words, it said. Now we will hear the truth from those at the center. Lady Syraxa, speak. Syraxa stepped forward. Her voice carried like thunder. On Venar I was chained by the enemy. My strength was drained. Alone I would have fallen. The human Captain Rylan cut the heart of the enemy and freed me. His actions saved me. His presence did not weaken me but gave me life. That is truth. You may twist it into fear or you may see it as hope, but you cannot deny it. Some envoys nodded slowly. Others frowned. The Accord Master turned to Rylan. And you, human, what do you say? Rylan stepped forward. His voice was steady. I did not come to the Accord to divide it. I did not ask for this. I only acted as any human would. We are not the strongest. We are not the tallest, but we are survivors. When walls fall, we find a way to stand. If that is dangerous, then we have always been dangerous. If it is hope, then let it be hope. But I tell you this, humanity seeks only to walk beside you, not above you. The words stirred the chamber. For a moment there was quiet. Then a new voice spoke from the upper row. It was Lord Koresh, a Carvos elder of great rank. His armor was older than most ships. His voice was cold. The Carvos need no saving from humans. We are warriors. We are proud. If our numbers fall, it is the will of the stars. To mix our blood with these fragile creatures is shame. Lady Syraxa, you dishonor your people by standing with him. Gasps filled the chamber. All eyes turned to Syraxa. She stood tall, her face like stone. For a moment she said nothing. Then she raised her head. "I am Carvos," she said. "I carry our pride. I carry our strength. But pride without life is death. Strength without wisdom is ruin. I did not choose this union. It chose us in the fire of battle. If that is shame, then I accept it. But I will not call life itself dishonor." Lord Koresh's eyes burned. He struck his staff on the floor. "Then you are no daughter of Carvos." The chamber broke into chaos. Some shouted in support of Koresh. Others cried out for Saraxa. The Accord Master called for order, but the voices were too many. That night the station was restless. Crowds filled the halls. Protests rose outside the council doors. Some carried banners that called humans saviors. Others raised signs calling them deceivers. Fights broke out in the lower districts between supporters and opposers. Rylan walked the quiet paths near the docking bay. He needed space to think. He had seen battles, but this was different. This was not fought with blades, but with words and fear. He wondered if humanity was ready for such weight. Saraxa found him there. She stood with her arms crossed, her face dark. "Koresh speaks for many of my people," she said. "They will not accept this truth. They will call me traitor." Rylan looked at her. "And you, what do you believe?" For a long time she said nothing. Then her eyes softened just slightly. "I believe what I saw. I believe the chains broke when you acted. I believe our strength is greater together than apart. I do not know what that means for tomorrow, but I know it is real." Rylan nodded. "Then we hold to that. The rest will follow, or they will not." Days passed and the storm grew. Reports came of riots on Carvos' homeworlds. Human colonies received threats. Some alien leaders called for sanctions against Earth. Others called for research to explore the new link. The Accord itself seemed to shake. In the middle of this chaos, Saraxa was summoned to the Carvos Council aboard their flagship. She was ordered to appear before her elders. The message was clear. She was to answer for her actions on Vanar and for standing beside a human. Before she left, she stood before Rylan. "If I do not return, remember this. You changed the way I see. That cannot be undone." Rylan wanted to speak but held his words. He only gave a firm nod. Saraxa entered the Carvos Hall, filled with armored giants. Lord Koresh stood at the center, his staff gleaming. He spoke of shame, of broken pride, of betrayal. He demanded she renounce the human and deny the union. But Saraxa raised her head and answered in a voice that shook the chamber. "I will not deny truth. On Vanar I lived because of him. If that offends your pride, then your pride is weaker than I thought. If I must walk a new path, I will. Even if I walk it alone." The council erupted in anger. Koresh declared her exiled from the Carvos until she renounced her words. But Saraxa did not bow. She turned her back and walked away, her steps steady. When she returned to the Accord station, Rylan was waiting. She looked at him with calm eyes. "I am no longer welcome among my own, but I am still warrior, and I stand with you." Rylan placed his hand over his chest in respect. "Then we face what comes together." The storm of the Accord was not over. It was only beginning. But in that storm, a bond had been forged that no council could break. The Accord station had become a storm without end. In every corridor, voices clashed. Some spoke of hope, others of fear. The news of Lady Saraxa's exile spread like fire. Many of her people called her traitor, yet others whispered her name with quiet respect. The humans, too, felt the weight of the storm. Some feared punishment from the Accord, while others believed a new future was opening before them. Captain Rylan stayed near Saraxa, though the path grew harder. He had fought in battles where blades and fire decided the day, yet here every look, every word, every rumor felt like a strike. Still he stood firm. Humanity could not show weakness now. Saraxa carried herself with iron resolve, yet inside she wrestled with questions. She had lost the trust of her council. She had left behind the halls of her ancestors. Still she had not bent. She had spoken truth and would not take it back. But what if truth itself led to ruin? Could the union between human and Carvos truly hold meaning, or would it destroy both in the end? The answer came quietly, without fanfare. One morning aboard the Accord station, Saraxa called Rylan to her chamber. Her voice was steady, but her golden eyes shone with something new. When he entered, she placed a hand over her chest and said, "The healers have confirmed it. Life grows within me. It is the joining of human and Carvos." Rylan froze. For a moment, the world around him vanished. He had faced war machines and alien storms, yet nothing had struck his heart with such force. "Are you certain?" he asked. She nodded. "The healers are clear. It is no sickness, no shadow. It is life." Rylan drew a deep breath. 100 thoughts ran through his mind at once. Hope, fear, responsibility. He knew what this meant. The whispers in the council would no longer be whispers. They would become shouts. The storm would grow. Yet as he looked at Saraxa, he saw not ruin but light. She was no longer only a warrior. She was the bearer of something new. "A bridge between two peoples. We must protect this," he said quietly. Saraxa's lips curved in a faint smile. "Yes, but we cannot protect it by hiding. If this child is proof, then the Accord must see it." The decision was made. Word spread faster than any envoy could carry it. By the time Saraxa and Rylan stood again in the Grand Council chamber, the seats were full. Envoys who had once ignored them now leaned forward with burning eyes. The Accord Master called for silence, though the chamber trembled with expectation. Saraxa stepped forward. Her voice carried with power. "When I stood here before, I spoke of truth. Now I bring more than words. Life itself has spoken. A child grows within me. It is not only Carvos. It is not only human. It is both." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Some cried out in anger. Others rose to their feet in awe. Lord Koresh stood from the Carvos section, his face like stone. "This is blasphemy," he shouted. "This cannot be. It must not be." But Saraxa did not waver. "It is. You may deny my words, but you cannot deny the life within me. The Accord can cling to old fears, or it can step into a new dawn. The choice is yours." Rylan followed her with his own words. "You speak of balance, of unity, of peace. Here is proof that unity is more than a dream. If you cast it away, then perhaps you never believed in peace at all." The chamber erupted once more. Some envoys pressed for study and protection of the unborn child. Others demanded exile and containment. The master of the Accord struggled to keep order, yet the voices grew wild. That night, threats filled the halls. Messages came from Carvos warlords promising to storm the station and seize Saraxa. Human colonies sent pleas for safety, fearing retribution. The station itself became a powder keg. Rylan and Saraxa withdrew to the edge of the docking bay where stars glowed beyond the glass. For a time they spoke little. The weight of the galaxy pressed on them. Finally, Rylan said, "If they turn against us, will you still stand?" Saraxa turned her eyes to him. "I have already lost the hall of my ancestors. I have already borne the mark of exile. What more can they take if I must stand against all? I will. For this child I will." Rylan's chest swelled with pride and resolve. "And so will I." The days that followed tested that vow. A faction of Carvos ships arrived at the station, demanding Saraxa be handed over. Human defense fleets scrambled, refusing to surrender her. Skirmishes threatened to spark in orbit. Inside the council chamber, debates raged without end. The Accord Master finally declared a final trial, not a trial of crime, but a trial of choice. The child, though not yet born, would be placed under the judgment of the Accord. If the council chose fear, Saraxa and Rylan would be stripped of all protection and cast into exile beyond known space. If the council chose hope, the child would be declared under Accord protection, a living symbol of unity. The chamber filled to its highest seat. Every envoy was present. Even distant races sent their voices through light. The moment had come. Saraxa walked into the chamber with armor polished bright. Rylan walked beside her, his uniform bearing the seal of Earth. They did not lower their heads. They did not hide their fear. They stood before the endless rows of envoys and waited. The Accord Master called for votes. One by one, the banners lit. Some shone green for hope. Others burned red for fear. The chamber glowed with clashing colors. Rylan held his breath as the count rose. When the last banner lit, silence fell. The Master raised its hand. "The Accord has spoken. By narrow margin, the choice is hope. The child shall be protected." The chamber shook with divided cries. Some cheered, some shouted in anger. But the decision was made. Saraxa closed her eyes for a moment. Relief swept through her like a tide, though she knew the struggle was far from over. Rylan placed a hand over his chest in silent vow. The months that followed were heavy with challenge. Saraxa faced threats from her own people. Yet she also found quiet support from those who believed in her. Humans rallied behind Rylan, sending envoys of friendship to other races. Slowly, the storm began to shift. When the day of birth came, the Accord itself held its breath. Healers from many races stood ready. Leaders waited outside the chamber. and when the cry of the newborn echoed through the station, it was unlike any sound heard before. Strong yet soft, strange yet familiar, Syraxa held the child in her arms. The small body carried hints of both her strength and Ryland's form. Golden eyes blinked open, and for a moment even the most hardened warriors felt their hearts soften. Ryland stood beside her, gazing at the child with awe. "This is proof," he whispered. Syraxa nodded, her voice low but firm. "Not proof of weakness, proof of what can be." Word spread across the stars. Some still denied, some still feared, but many more saw the truth with their own eyes. The child was not a shadow. It was life. It was hope. Years later, historians would look back on that day as the turning point. The day the Accord saw that walls could fall. The day a human and a Carvos gave the galaxy something new. But in that moment, as Syraxa and Ryland looked at the child, they did not think of history. They thought only of the life they had brought forth. A life that carried both their worlds. A life that might heal what centuries of war had broken. And for the first time in many days, peace touched their hearts.